Okay, good evening, and thank you very much for coming along tonight. This is a session that I would rather not be holding. This is a session that you don't really want to be at, because the reason that you're here is because something went wrong in September. And I am going to try and talk to you a little bit about that and how we can put that right to make sure that you pass in December, that you get through on a resit attempt. So if actually this is if actually you haven't sat the exam and you haven't studied for the exam, this perhaps is not the webinar for you. I'm doing another webinar later this evening about starting to study and pass the exam first time. This webinar is dedicated to trying to help you turn it around, in the next 5 to 6 weeks. It's very understandable that you have been angry and that you've been upset and you've been frustrated when you got your result. But today is Wednesday, and I'm hoping that that anger and that frustration has begun to die down, and that what we've got to do is look forward. We can't change the past, but what we can do is think a little bit more about the future. And this session is, I suppose, orientated towards helping you frame a strategy for the future. So, what are we going to cover in this session? I want to do some introductions of myself and of you. I want to talk about the exam, and I want to talk about the resources that we have available to us that will enable us to overcome, that will enable us to succeed at the next exam in December. And I will be allowing time at the end, as always, for any questions or anything, whether they're technical, whether they're to do with SBR or whatever. So first of all, when it comes to introductions, the first thing I want to do is effectively to introduce myself. And I'm an ACCA member. So I took these exams, I studied for these exams when I was working. When I was a young man, I was engaged, and then I got married. I was still having to study in the evenings and the weekends because I was working. So I do remember what it was like. Obviously, it was before the internet, and the exams were paper exams. They were different in those days. But I am an ACCA member, and I've always worked very closely with ACCA. I still continue to help ACCA in various capacities. So you will come across me. If you go through their website and do some of their stuff, you will see some of my input there. But shortly after I qualified whilst I was working for KPMG. I was in their corporate recovery department, which is basically bankruptcy, liquidations. One of the people that I kind of dealt with at the time, went through the office, was George Best, who didn't pay his taxes and ended up going bankrupt. But that's another story. KPMG wasn't for me. Practice wasn't for me. I found my vocation in teaching, and I spent many, many happy years working at Kaplan, Borough High Street, and also teaching throughout the world. The opportunities that working for Kaplan and liaising with ACCA gave me an opportunity to teach right the way across the world. And in fact, I ended up living and working out in Singapore for a number of years. And when I came back, I wanted to do something different. I continued my consultancy role with ACCA. I did some work for my local university, but I decided to design and deliver my own online courses. And that is what I now do. So this is disintermediation. I directly help students pass their SBR exam. That is what I do, all right? Through my lectures, through my WhatsApp support, through marking, This is what I do. I don't do anything else, all right? So we're talking introductions, and I suppose one person I should introduce you to very briefly is my wife. There we are. That's it. That's the picture of my wife. Right. I would like to know a little bit about you And the most effective way of learning a little bit about you is to ask you to do a poll. Now, these polls are anonymous, and these polls are just for fun. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about me understanding a little bit more about the 20 or so people that we've got logging in tonight. And I'm just asking you to give your first reaction, your honest opinion as to the situation. It's anonymous, going anywhere. I will share the group results when you've all had an opportunity of having a go at the question. So there are 3 questions that I'm asking. And the first question is, broadly speaking, what your mark was. The second question is, broadly speaking, why do you think you failed? Why didn't you succeed? And the last question is about a little bit about track record. So let me just give you another moment or two. Most people have submitted an answer. I'm not trying to catch you out, not right or wrong. It's anonymous. It just helps me. And then I can give you a little bit of feedback. Just another moment as I find out a little bit more about you. Okay, I think we're done. Yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bish, bash, bosh. Right. So, what statements suits you best? The vast majority of people attending here today got more than 40. And I think if you got more than 40 in the last exam, you really are in an ideal situation to retake the exam in December. The information is there, the knowledge is fresh, and you'll be looking to improve at the margins. If you got in the 30s, there's a bit of counselling, I think, involved, or there's a judgment involved as to why you got in the 30s. If you've got 38, 39, that's more like the 40s. If you've got sort of 30, 31, I'm putting you more in the 20s camp. If you're in the 20s camp, I don't recommend that you do a resit for December. I think if you got in the 20s, you've really got to go back to basics and prepare for March. So 30s, you're in the kind of hinterland, the high 30s, and you're confident that you've got a clean run into the exam. 1 exam at a time, by the way. Never do 2 exams in 1 sitting. That's my standing advice. Okay, so I think most of you are primed to do it again in December. Now, self-analysis, reflection, where did you go wrong? And there's a proportion of you, 20% of you, who have no idea why you didn't pass. I find that slightly scary. One of the things I do on my courses is mark your work. Yeah? Give you feedback, give you tough love, give you support, tell you how to improve. And therefore, you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you develop an exam day strategy. The 2 most, very broadly speaking, common reasons for failing are to do with just not knowing the stuff, yeah, and lacking an exam technique. And it's interesting that the most popular answer is lacking an exam technique, time management. That's probably the easier one to fix. Yeah, practice. Time management, feedback. I can show you, I can teach you how to approach questions, what the examiner's looking for. I do a lot of my debriefs in real time. I produce answers that you're capable of producing. Don't produce answers like the examiner does. I mean, you know, it's all a bit crazy sometimes when you look at the detail and complexities of those answers. That's not what you need to pass the exam. Nobody has perfect knowledge. Yeah, if you feel your knowledge was lacking, maybe, just maybe, you're a little bit hard on yourself because, excuse me, nobody has perfect knowledge. You only need 50% to pass. Yeah. Now, I'm heartened by the fact that most of you have already passed an ACCA exam. If you've already passed a strategic professional exam, you know what it takes. You know what it takes. Yeah, you're comfortable at this level. If you've passed a skills exam, there is a step up. There is a step up. It has to be said. It has to be acknowledged. Strategic professional is a little tougher. It's a higher academic standard than skills. Skills, multiple choice. Skills, numbers, accounts preparation. Yeah, very little analysis, very little synthesis, very little. If you do FR, pass exam, pass exam, pass exam, by the time you've done 4 or 5, you've kind of covered everything. The SBR exam is so original. The examining team are very creative, and for that reason, it is slightly difficult because it's not a black and white. It's not a black and white exam. It's not a multiple choice exam. So look, that gives me a little bit of understanding. That gives me a little bit of comfort as to who I'm talking to today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a bit of a loud shirt, wasn't it? What do you see? What's that a picture of? You look to the left or do you look to the right? What's that image? What's that showing you? Please use the chat box. Yeah. So, Samantha's got double vision. Yeah. Humag thinks it's a duck, whereas Fahim thinks it's a rabbit. Fundamentally, you're both right. And this is the joy and the frustration of SBR. You're writing that ethics question, you're making a valid point, somebody else is making a valid point, and you're both correct. And those points may or may not be in the model answer. That is why these scripts, that is why your answers have to be expert marked. They cannot be marked by a computer. We're living in a complex world. It's not a binary world. All right. That's why I want to mark your work. That's why I want to give you feedback. That's why, you're doing a high level qualifying strategic examination. So just be aware there's a place for rote learning, but most of you admitted you had the knowledge, but it was a question of the application of the knowledge. Okay, all right. Let me sort of finish with the introductions there, and let me talk to you a little bit about the exam that you know already. You were guinea pigs. You were the first cohort that had the pre-populated spreadsheet. What did you think? Did you like the pre-populated spreadsheet? Were you prepared for the pre-populated spreadsheet? One of the things ACCA has asked me to do is to do a presentation to tutors next week around the teaching of question 1 and the student feedback on question 1. So I'm genuinely interested how you found question 1, the pre-populated spreadsheet. Now, maybe this format with the meeting chat is perhaps not the best format, but if you've got any strong, passionate views on how you found question 1 that you want to share with me, so I can share that back with ACCA and reflect it on, please WhatsApp me. Yeah, please WhatsApp me, and I'll be more than happy to take it on board and to feed that back into the examining team, to feed that back into other tutors, and to mold it with other comments that I get. Question 1 is on groups. Could be cash flow, could be P&L, could be balance sheet. We had a P&L and a balance sheet last time, depending on which exam that you took. The numbers I think should be done last. The requirement for the numbers is always last, but there's always words there. And you should probably do the question holistically so that you sort out the theory, explain what's going on, calculate the number, drop the number in the spreadsheet, then go back. So question 1, I'll be honest with you, I like it. Genuinely, I like it. And if I like question 1, I love question 2. Question 2 on ethics. All right. Question 2 deals with a practical situation and gets you to write, gets you to discuss, gets you to apply the knowledge. Application. You're never going to be asked about the 5 pillars. You're always going to be given a practical situation, maybe around customer data, maybe around an accounting policy, maybe around bullying, that you've somehow then got to relate back to ethics. Question 2 is normally a wholly written question. Well, if ethics is about application, accounting standards, question 3 and 4, and in fact, accounting standards also comes up with question 1 and question 2, accounting standards runs right the way through. Accounting standards is application. You know, it's difficult coming from an FR perspective into SBR because of the integrated nature. You could be having to discuss the deferred tax implications of a lease. Yeah. So not only have you got to know about leasing, but you've got to know about deferred tax, and you've got to put the two together. You could be talking about the deferred tax implications and the cash flow implications of share-based payments. And it's not a question then of regurgitating definitions. It's a question of understanding and applying. And often in those situations, you're helping out an investor. There's an element of investor focus. And this is now going to be part of the furniture for question 4. In old school, we talk about current issues. Old school will talk about, you know, the latest exposure draft, the latest article. These days, it's more about, how an investor thinks around the topic, how we can explain, how we as accountants can communicate. Yes, we have to be a bit nerdy. Yes, we have to know the detail. Also, be, you know, the fancy stuff on derivatives and the fancy stuff on pensions. But we also have provisions. We also have things like impairment. And users still don't really always understand about the cash flow implications or the deferred tax implications, the effect on earnings. You know, if there's an impairment loss, but it's been written off against equity, doesn't affect earnings, doesn't affect cash flow. Yeah, does affect gearing. These things need to be understood or explained. And so there's a limit in some respects to learning. Because in the exam, you're always going to have to be reacting to the unique version of the question that you have in front of you. Why have I got a bunch of keys? Keys open doors. Old keys will not open new doors. If you go back and you look at the same revision notes and you do the same questions and you follow the same pattern of studies that led you to the September exam, I predict you'll get the same result. Yeah? Old keys won't open new doors. So what you've got coming up now is a little bit of a sales pitch from me. I can talk about the free resources. I can answer your questions in a minute, but I want to talk to you briefly about my Revision Plus course, which has now gone live. There is a limited window for anybody wanting to register for this course. I understand that in order to pass SBR, you need knowledge and you need skills. You need to have the technical knowledge, so I revise that. You need to have the exam technique, and so I think about that. And I think about it in terms of groups, IFRSs, ethics, and investor focus. We've got technical knowledge, revision on groups, skills on groups, technical knowledge on IFRS, skills on IFRS, etc. I take in for each of these topics an assignment for marking. The reason I close the course in 10 days' time is partly to quality control in terms of numbers. There's only a limited number of people I want on the course, but also because of the marking content, because I've got to stay married, I've got to stay sane, but also because there are deadlines. And I want you to be submitting a piece of work every few days so that you build up, you get the feedback, you go back, you improve. There's a dialogue, there's an interaction between us. And so you are well prepared to take the first mark, then you're even better prepared to take the second mark, and that launches you into the third mark. All right. So marking is a really key, important aspect of my Revision Plus course. When I say marking, actually, I really mean feedback. Giving somebody a mark, 0, 10, is not really that useful. People need to be told why they've got the answer right, why they've got the answer wrong, and most importantly, how they can improve. And so this is an example of marking. Information, answer has been submitted on the left, black, and the feedback given is on the right. Your script will be marked properly with decent feedback so you can go on a journey, so you can understand why you failed. Some of you said you don't understand why you failed. Yeah, you've got to understand why you failed in order to put it right for next time. All of you, if you need another 5, 10 marks, you can improve either a little bit technically or a little bit on exam technique, or a lot technically and a little bit on exam technique, or the other way around. You can improve both. Yeah, we can turn this around. Yeah, together we can turn this around. There's WhatsApp support provided because you've always individually got technical queries. I also have a daily messenger system that I send out on the WhatsApp groups. Yeah, there's debrief videos. I take the examiner's questions, and I debrief them. I work them as I would have worked them, trying to give you empathy and show you how to do it. My Revision Plus is there with the vast majority of my students are self-financing, like I was. All right. And therefore I have a payment plan. You can split the fee into 2 to make it more affordable. But this course must close. My Revision Plus course must close at the end of the month. No ifs, no buts, no exception. It's there on the net. You can register now. All right. I think it's a wonderful course, but then I would say that, wouldn't I? I think it's a wonderful course, but I would say that, wouldn't I? I will leave you, I hope, to read those comments. If you haven't had decent marking and feedback before, it's a game changer. If you haven't had 24/7 WhatsApp support, it's a game changer. I'm prepared to put the work in because I know you're putting the work in. Yeah, so it's a synergy. It's a synergy. in order for you to engage with me, you have to reach out. And you've reached out to a certain extent to the fact you've signed up for this free webinar. And if you want to engage further, then one way of doing that is by WhatsApping me. Another way is to sign up directly on the course, using that link. FME. I'm with FME. So I have a very unusual name, Clendon, Clendon, and FME is my platform, my approved learning provider. We're Platinum. So we're ACCA official, suited and booted. And maybe, just maybe, we could have a look inside the course. So let's have a look. So those of you who sign up for the course, this is the sort of thing that you get. All right, so obviously you start at the beginning and there's a welcome video. There's, of course, there's a study plan. We have some live sessions for motivational and structure, whatever. And then we get involved in these various initial phases. I've broken the syllabus down. This is at the beginning of November. We've got the deadlines for marking. So you've got to do groups first. And then standards, you work through the course chronologically. And you've got there an hour and 15. So I've got a video there where I'm summarizing basically all of the accounting standards in an hour. Ended up being an hour and 15 because I ended up talking about derivatives. You've then got 17 pages of notes or so on accounting standards. Again, every standard covered. Here I'm teaching you how to approach the exam questions. Then I'm showing you, giving you a marking challenge, giving you an opportunity. And this is the same for everyone, for groups, for IFRSs, ethics, for investor focus. It's the same pattern. Then there's a question. I show you how I do the question. And then we've got a piece of work for marking, an original piece of work for marking that you do, you submit in to me for marking. I then mark it. You've got access to the answer. And then there's a revision. So that pattern, that's an evening or two of revising, doing a piece of homework. And then you move on to ethics, you move on to investor focus, you move on to cash flow. Of course, I'm covering UK content if that's relevant to you. Probably isn't, but if it is, we've got an additional library of questions. So these are all on groups. These are all on IFRSs. These are all on ethics. These are all on investor focus. These are on cash flow. So there's lots of little questions for you to do, questions and answers. There's a couple of mocks that are taken in for marking. There's 2 original mocks that are taken in for marking. And we've also got here me debriefing. So, there are some specimen papers, but they're a bit dry and the examiner's got a very fulsome answer. So I've written my own answer. I've debriefed these specimen papers. These are the ones on the ACCA practice platform. So you can do them. You can see my answers and you can see my debrief videos so that you've got a sort of a consistent way of understanding how to break an answer down, where they are. And then there's some additional mocks as well going through there. So lots of resources aimed at helping you pass this examination. That's my Revision Plus course. And obviously, to come on my Revision Plus course, that involves a monetary transaction, an investment of your time, and an investment of your money as well. If you want a free sample of my material, then use your phone and use that QR code and you've got access to a free sample, or WhatsApp me and say, can I have the free sample? All right, I'll leave this screen up for another 10 seconds because I know some of you will want to have that free sample, and you can get that free sample either by using the QR code, just holding up your phone to it, or by WhatsApping me now, and then when I finish the session, I will obviously send it through. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Spotify. I do a podcast. There's a whole series of podcasts there, which are freely available on Spotify, or your favorite platform. They're also on Google. They're also on Apple. And again, you can use the QR code there. And each of these, the aim is they're about 10 minutes long, and they cover various technical articles, at least most of them do. I guess most of you are on LinkedIn and follow me on LinkedIn, but I do publish content and information. I think today was a picture of me with a bit of chocolate cake on or something. So hardly very educational, simply celebrating something that's a very kind student had sent some chocolate cake. But I am active on LinkedIn, and please feel free to join me on LinkedIn if you're not already. I have an active YouTube account, and I will be posting a copy of this video on YouTube. So if you do want to watch it again, you can, but there are other videos there, me debriefing some questions and so on and so forth. But look, I've been talking now for half an hour. My intention is, not to talk forever, but to allow you the opportunity of also asking me questions. And perhaps the easiest way of you asking me questions is in the chat box. I mean, I can take you off mute if you want. If you want to ask, come off mute. Ask to come off mute, and I'll take everybody off mute. But normally it works probably slightly better if, okay, I've got a private message here. Yeah, international. All right, international. So there are three versions of the exam. There's the international, and then there's the UK and the Irish variant. The UK and the Irish variant is slightly harder and is to be done only if you want a practicing certificate in the UK or Ireland. That means that you have your own firm. That means that you are able to be an audit partner. And if you're going to go down that career route, you'll also need to do AAA and also the UK variant of the AAA or the Irish variant of the AAA. You just have to learn a little bit more about FRS 102. Okay. So yeah, my standard point is you recognize, my standard point is to do the international because it's slightly easier. Good. There's another question coming through privately. I happily please put them on the anyone. Rote learning. Do you need to rote learn the standards? Do you need to rote learn the standards? No and yes. You don't need to rote learn the. You don't need to rote learn the name of the standard. You probably need to rote learn one. So the name and the number of the standard never earn you any marks. So don't even bother. You probably need to have an understanding of one key phrase or definition that you can trot out. Okay, so impairment, an asset is impaired when the carrying value exceeds the recoverable amount. All right. A provision, three conditions have to be met. So there's a little bit of rote learning, but if you find yourself in the exam repeating stuff from memory, you're not answering the question, because the question will never be, what's the definition of impairment? The question will be, your client has a factory which is burnt down, polluted the ground, the neighbour's ground next door to it, damaged next door's building, and you've got an insurance claim outstanding. Discuss, explain. And so the damage to the building is an indicator of impairment. Do you have an obligation to clear up the mess that you caused to next door's building? Probably. And the insurance claim is a contingent asset. So there's potentially sort of 3 separate accounting issues all tied up with that fire. And a client needs to be able to, you need to be able to identify for the client that the fire equals impairment. If they want the definition of impairment, they can look it up. They want practical advice. If you were to sit the international exam, then further down the line, want a practicing certificate, is it possible? Yes. Yes. So you can effectively, once you've qualified, if you then decide you want to go into practice, you can redo the SBR exam. Painful, because you're then a few years older and a busy bee and slightly out of date. But yes, you can. So you do have that option. When is the September exam available? Yeah, keep your eye open for that. That should be coming out. Bear in mind the answer is I don't know. Bear in mind that the September exam is more than one exam, and they publish a compilation. The examiner's report should be out in a few days' time. I think I'm being sent a copy of it next week. So that's still being, I guess, they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's on that as well. I'm pausing. So I've got a question here about throwing more light on question number 1. Okay. So when it comes to question number 1, what you're given is a pre-populated spreadsheet. You're given effectively the set of accounts that have been prepared. Could be a balance sheet, could be a P&L, could be a cash flow, or extracts from them. And then you have information which tells you that either mistakes have been made or things have been omitted. So you have to then explain the correct treatment that should have been adopted. And you then have to numerically manipulate the pre-populated spreadsheet. And I suppose the reason for this is to try and mirror more accurately what's going on in the real world of accountants. Because by the time you've got to the highest level, by the time you're going to qualify, the idea is you're not necessarily going to be directly involved in the physical accounts preparation. Kind of the computer does that, your assistant does that, you're the expert sitting at the top, and what you're trying to do is solve the tricky little problems. Oh, we forgot to do the impairment review. Oh, let's calculate the impairment review on goodwill, and let's see how it affects the accounts. Oh, we did the pensions this way, and it's wrong, so we've got to unpick what we did, and then we've got to put the pensions in correctly. So some of those consolidation, some of those adjustments to the group accounts will be of a consolidation nature, i.e. group accounts. Oh, we treat it as an associate. Oh, and it's really a sub, you know? Or we treat it as a sub and it's really an associate. I mean, it's like bananas, yeah? It's easiest in its way when nothing has been done, and therefore you're putting it on a blank sheet of paper. But sometimes it's been done incorrectly, therefore you've got to unpick it and then put the right thing in there. So the pre-populated spreadsheet, it's just something that you have to get used to. It's not meant to make it more difficult. It's not meant to make it more easy. It's just meant to make it as it is, you know, a little bit more real. And I know some of you have struggled with it. I know that. I know that. And it's something that you then have to think about in terms of your strategy, because in terms of time management, you've got to answer all 4 questions. And if you struggle with it, and you struggle with it for an hour and a half or 2 hours in the exam, you've blown it. Yeah, you've blown it. So it's not a question of practice makes perfect. I don't believe in perfection. I don't like perfection. But it's a question of getting used to it. And how do you get used to it? Practice. And there's plenty of questions on my course to practice. Does that help, Julie? Good. Good. I'm glad it does. Right. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Yeah, I mean, there is a strategy around the order in which you do the questions. There is a strategy. And that's a personal strategy. And it's something I do discuss with my students. And because you're doing mock after mock, which are being marked and fed back and have that opportunity, you know, some people do question 1 first, question 2 second, question 3 third, question 4 fourth. Fine, fine. That's your conscious decision. Then that's fine. But don't do it in that order because they're called question 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do it because that's the way you want to do it, and that plays to your strength and your time management. Something worth very much thinking about. Good. Right. Well, it's 6:45. I'm going to be quiet for... Oh, we've got some more questions coming through. What are the most important IFRSs to know? The ones that come up in your exam? Let me give you 2 answers to that. 2 serious answers to that. One is breadth rather than depth. So you saw I tried to summarize all of the accounting standards in 1 hour and 15. All of the accounting standards in 17 pages of notes. Now, you're not going to be an expert if that's what you know, but it's going to enable you to write. There was quite a bit on government grants in one of the exams, you know, which is not a big standard, but you've got to know the difference between capital grants and revenue grants and deferred income and how they're dealt with. So which are the most important IFRSs to know? One answer is all of them. You need to know something about all of them. Something about investment property, something about government grants, something about provisions. All right. The second answer is financial instruments. Because when you think about financial instruments, investments, receivables, loans, share capital, investments in bonds, investments in shares. I mean, half the balance sheet is made up of financial instruments, hedging. So, yeah, that's my double answer there. Probably not the one you wanted to hear. But there you go. There you go. Good. Thank you for your thank you. I'm going to be quiet for 1 more minute. And if there isn't a question that pops up within the next minute, I'm going to call proceedings to a halt. Exam technique. I've just put my WhatsApp number there again. If you want to contact me, it's the easiest way of getting hold of me. What exam technique can we use? When I talk about exam technique, that's a very umbrella term. It's a bit like talking about sport. Sporty, what does it mean? Exam technique is about getting the most out of the knowledge that you have in order to earn the easy marks. So exam technique is partly about time management to make sure you answer every question, partly about picking the low-hanging fruit so that you state the obvious, partly about having a structure to your answer, so you have a beginning, middle, and an end, partly about reading the question, making sure you understand what you're being asked about. So exam technique is, my nephew's got a little boy and he's 3 years old and he's beginning to talk. So he knows that his name is Joshua and he knows he's 3 years old. So I said to him the other day, "Hi, how old are you?" He said to me, "My name is Joshua." Now that was bad exam technique. He had rote learned the answer. Technically he was correct, but he rote learned the answer. Poor exam technique, 0 marks. All right. So exam technique is about answering the question you're being set in the time allowed. Patrick, that's the majority of us, isn't it? That's what I was like as a student, and that's the vast majority. It's about, so Patrick is asking any advice for those currently working and studying, one exam at a time, being realistic. Okay, being realistic. So this session is aimed at resitting SBR. You can resit SBR, you can pass SBR with support, with help in December if you got 40 or nearly 40 in the last exam. I can improve. Get the buy-in of your loved ones, your partner, your kids, your parents, your friends, your boss, so they cut you a little bit of slack because you're going to be antisocial, you're going to be stressed out, you're going to be working. Build into your timetable some rest. Understand why you are doing this. Understand your motivation. Is it money? Not a problem with that. Is it career advancement? Yeah. Is it fulfilling your potential? Is it because when you start something, you want to finish it? Is it to prove a point to your father, to your boss? Yeah. To your brother, to your sister, whatever it is. Work out what this is going to mean to you to qualify. What will you do when you qualify? Will that be a promotion? Will that be a new job? Will that be a holiday? Will you be able to move house? What's it going to mean to you? Because that is, I think, going to give you the motivation to sacrifice. The main sacrifice you make is time. By far and away, the biggest sacrifice past this examination is time. All I can do is make you smarter. I can help you, be more efficient with your time by marking your script, by giving you access to the best material. Right? You still got to put the time in though, but perhaps you'll put in less time, and perhaps you'll be more efficient with your time when you're going through a structured course with fresh material. The real risk of having failed the exam once is you fail the exam a second time because you don't do anything different. Podcasts is one little thing, Patrick. On the train to work, when you're jogging, at lunch break, whenever, study little and often. Study little and often. Another question I've been asked here directly: are you able to provide more information regarding? Thank you, Patrick. Are you able to provide more information about investor focus? Yes, in a strange way, it's not a topic in its own right. In a strange way, you have to integrate the mindset of investor focus throughout your studies. Because you could be asked to explain anything to an investor. Why profit doesn't equal cash? Why something is in investing activities, not in financing activities. So you learn the stuff, but in the exam, it's not about how much have you learned, it's how much you can apply, and you've got to put yourself in the shoes of someone else. we're accountants, so we're communicating, and it's about accountability, and that means, yeah, telling answering our stakeholders' queries, and that's really what the exam is trying to replicate. Azanzo, that's a real dilemma. That's a real dilemma. Because what you've done there is this is a long conversation to have. I'm happy to have it with you on a one-to-one basis. But unless you've got a very clear diary, probably best you do one exam, not two. It's also probably best you get rid of SBR first before you do AAA, because the two build on each other. But ultimately, you've got to ask yourself which exam you've got the most likely to pass. So if you got 25 in SBR and you've finished AAA and you're loving it, and maybe you do just AAA, that would be an unusual scenario. Yeah, you ask a question for I'm in a slight dilemma about, and you're valid to ask it and to think about it. Which is the best? Which do you think you're going to best chance to pass? If you've got a AAA tutor, speak to the AAA tutor. All right. If you haven't got a AAA tutor, contact my colleague Ben Wilson. Have a chat. To get to your podcast, is there any links, etc.? Yeah, it's very easy to get hold of my podcast. One way is to WhatsApp me, then I can just send you the link. The other is just go on Google. And if you go on Google, then you will find, I did give you the thing on the podcast, didn't I? There's Spotify there. You've got the ability there to QR code that if you've got a mobile phone to hand. But the podcast is readily available freely on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. It's out there. The free sample is there for you to gain access to. If you want a copy of the free sample, there are various ways that you can get hold of that free sample. You can get hold of that free sample by WhatsApping me, and I'll send you a link. Or you can use the QR code. So that's a way of getting hold of the free sample. The free sample's there already. Right, coming up on the hour. I'm going to say farewell. Thank you very much. I look forward to some of you reaching out to me again, and I will do my best to help you. But remember, old keys won't open up new doors. All right. So we have to redouble our efforts. We have to find fresh material. We have to do whatever it takes. And if you are able to come on my Revision Plus course, I would really welcome that, because that will give me a great opportunity for marking your work, giving you feedback, giving you fresh material, etc. So thank you very much. And good night, everybody. I hope that was okay. I hope you enjoyed that.